The perfect pastor. Have you ever trusted someone so much that you never imagined they could be hiding a secret? For 25 years, the members of Grace Covenant Church believed their pastor was exactly who he appeared to be. Pastor Michael was respected, admired, and loved. Every Sunday, the church was packed. People traveled from neighboring towns just to hear him preach. His sermons inspired hope. His prayers comforted the broken. To the congregation, he was more than a pastor. He was a role model, a man of integrity, a man of God. Nobody questioned him. Nobody doubted him. Not even his wife, Sarah. Sarah had stood beside Michael throughout his ministry. She watched the church grow from a small gathering into one of the most influential congregations in the region. Together, they built a life many people admired. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. But sometimes the strongest walls hide the darkest secrets. One Sunday morning, the church was overflowing. The choir had just finished a powerful worship session. The atmosphere was electric. People were smiling. Hands were raised in worship. Everything seemed normal. Pastor Michael stepped onto the altar with confidence. Bible in one hand, microphone in the other. The congregation applauded. He smiled warmly. Then he began his sermon. "Today," he said, "we're going to talk about truth." The congregation nodded. Many shouted amen. Ironically, nobody knew that before the service ended, the biggest truth in the church's history would be revealed. A truth capable of destroying everything. A truth Pastor Michael had spent decades trying to forget. Halfway through his message, the church doors slowly opened. People turned to look. A woman entered. She looked tired. Her clothes were worn. Her face carried the weight of many difficult years. Beside her stood a young man. Tall, quiet, serious. The woman scanned the room. Then her eyes locked onto Pastor Michael. Immediately, tears filled her eyes. For the first time that morning, Pastor Michael looked afraid. The woman slowly walked down the aisle. The church became silent. Even the children stopped moving. Nobody understood what was happening. She stopped directly in front of the altar. Then she spoke. "Michael." The congregation exchanged confused glances. Nobody called him Michael. To everyone else, he was Pastor Michael. But this woman spoke his name as if she had known him long before the church ever did. Pastor Michael's face turned pale. His wife Sarah immediately noticed. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The woman reached into her handbag. She pulled out an old envelope, yellow with age, worn from years of being carried around. Then she looked at the congregation. "I think it's time everyone knew the truth." The church became even quieter. Sarah stood up. "What is happening?" she asked. The woman turned toward her. Then she pointed to the young man beside her. "This is Michael's son." Gasps filled the sanctuary. People stood in disbelief. Others covered their mouths. Sarah froze. Her heart pounded. "No," she whispered. "No." She looked at her husband. "Tell me she's lying." But Michael said nothing. His silence said everything. The woman introduced herself as Rebecca. 26 years earlier, she and Michael had been engaged. They had planned to get married. Then she became pregnant. Instead of celebrating, Michael disappeared. No explanation. No goodbye. No warning. He simply vanished, leaving her alone, pregnant, and terrified. For years she struggled. For years she searched. But she never found him. Until one day she saw his face on television. A respected pastor. A respected husband. A respected community leader. Living a completely different life. Rebecca handed the envelope to church elders. Inside were photographs, letters, documents, evidence from a life Pastor Michael had hidden. The resemblance between Michael and the young man was undeniable. The church could no longer ignore the truth. The young man finally spoke. "My name is David." His voice echoed throughout the sanctuary. "I grew up without a father." Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. "My mother worked multiple jobs just to provide for me." Tears rolled down Rebecca's face. "There were nights she went hungry so I could eat." The room grew emotional. Even people who barely knew Rebecca found themselves crying. Then David looked directly at Michael. "I spent years wondering why my father never wanted me." The words struck like a hammer. Michael lowered his head. Finally, he spoke. "It's true." The church erupted. People cried. People whispered. Some walked out in shock. Others remained frozen. 25 years of trust had just been shattered. But then Michael said something unexpected. There is more to the story. Michael explained that years earlier he had gotten involved in a failed business venture. The failure left him drowning in debt. Dangerous people began threatening him. One evening, he was warned that Rebecca and the unborn child could become targets. Fear consumed him. Instead of facing the situation, he ran. He convinced himself he was protecting them. But years later he realized something painful. He wasn't protecting them. He was abandoning them. Rebecca listened quietly. Then she asked a question that silenced the room. If you truly loved us, why didn't you come back? Michael couldn't answer. Because there was no good answer. Years passed. The danger disappeared. His life improved. Yet he never returned. He built a new life, a new family, a new reputation. While Rebecca raised their son alone, the realization crushed him. For the first time, Pastor Michael stopped defending himself, stopped explaining, stopped hiding. Then he did something nobody expected. He knelt before the congregation. Tears streamed down his face. I sinned. The room remained silent. I failed as a father. More tears followed. I failed as a husband. Sarah began crying. And I failed God. The church board met shortly after the service. Weeks later, Pastor Michael resigned. His ministry ended. News spread quickly. People debated the situation everywhere. Some believed he deserved forgiveness. Others believed his actions were unforgivable. But the hardest journey belonged to the people closest to him. Sarah, Rebecca, and David. Months passed. Then something surprising happened. David agreed to meet Michael privately. One conversation became two. Two became 10. Slowly, healing began. Not because the pain disappeared, but because both men finally chose honesty. Rebecca eventually found peace as well. The past could never be changed, but she no longer wanted it controlling her future. Sarah faced the hardest decision of all, whether to forgive the man she once trusted completely. The process wasn't easy. It took years. But eventually, forgiveness won. 3 years later, Grace Covenant Church hosted a special service. Not led by Michael, but by David, the son whose existence changed everything. Standing behind the pulpit, David looked across the congregation and said, "The truth may destroy a lie, but it can also begin healing." The room erupted in applause, because everyone had learned a powerful lesson. Secrets can stay hidden for years, sometimes decades, but eventually, the truth finds its way into the light. And when it does, everything changes. If you were Sarah, would you have forgiven Michael after discovering the truth? Comment yes or no and tell me why.